Okay. Well, thank you, Neil. And thank you for the way that you read the statements. You read those statements every week and it must get kind of rote. And I could, just feel it in my heart as you were reading them. So um, thank you for that. And that the daily word is absolutely perfect for today's talk because my talk is today, hopefully one of optimism and hope. Um, I wanna give a little uh not a quiz, but I just want to ask a couple questions of you all, which if you're willing to, you can either answer by a raising of the hands or verbally, or even the little hand that's available, I think, in the chat. But my question is, by show of hands or otherwise, who has heard of near-death experiences? Has everybody heard of them? Have you heard of them, Bob? There's near-death experiences. Have you heard of what that word? And if you have, raise your hand. Okay, have not. Two hands on, and I know Marge has because she's fascinated with them like I have. And this is a be honest question. Does anybody have trouble believing in them? Do they seem kind of hokey or fake? No. Okay, everybody's in. And who has read or watched the stories of anybody else's NDE? You can nod your head if you have listened to these stories before. Okay, some of you have. And is anybody, and Marge is back, good.
All right, figuring this out.
No problem, glad you're with us. Is anybody else obsessed with near-death experiences like me? I am. Yeah, me and Marge. Yeah, and I absolutely, I mean, I watch at least one a day. I have several books from people who have written the stories. I have books from researchers who study them. And I mean, they fascinate me because obviously I think this is one of the most authentic glimpses into the next life. But it's also about the consistency and it's about the messages that they come back with. There are the things that they're told on the other side really ring true to me as things that a loving source presence would say to a soul. It's helpful, it's uplifting. In fact, it goes way beyond uplifting, but I'll get more into that later. There's a few outliers, but there's people from across socioeconomic, religious, cultural, time, all of the experiences that are known, and there are millions, are consistent. There are elements of them that are consistent. The stories vary widely, but the elements of them are very consistent. And this is from people who research them, like Raymond Moody. So I'm going to skip a little bit because I think I went too far and I wrote a talk that's too long. So I don't want to take us over, but I am very enthusiastic about this and maybe it'll turn into a series if people like it. So there are skeptics who don't believe that these things are real. They say that they're just, because of the drugs or because there's synapses in the brain or whatever. But this does not ring true to me because there are reports from people who accurately describe everything that's happened in the operating room where they were, what people said, what they did. They woke up from dying and pointed at that person and said, "You said this, and you said this, and you did that," and and freak people out. But there's no hallucination that can account for an accurate description of something that happened in the room. Okay, and these stories are corroborated often by the people that were present. And there's also something called shared death experiences that I think that legitimize these experiences well, which has anybody heard of shared death experiences? No? Shared death experiences is when a healthy person is with a dying person, but the healthy person experiences the dying person's near-death experience, and it's not a near-death experience, they're dying. And the healthy person sees what they see. They see the light, they see the person's life review. If they're related, the healthy person might recognize some of the scenes, but they don't have to be related. Strangers can get drawn into that. And I'm going to share the name of a book. Well, the name of the book is Glimpses of Eternity, that Raymond Moody wrote about shared death experiences. So they're just, they're really profound. And I also think that that it lends credence to some of the things that are in the Bible. There are consistencies with what is said in the Bible, and there are also great inconsistencies with Christianity as it's practiced today. So that's why I called it the religion of near-death experiences. That's a little bit what I feel like I have, because of the wisdom, the great wisdom that comes out of these experiences. And I'm going to talk about some of that as well. And finally, I have a friend of mine who actually had a near-death experience. He had a heart attack and he had a story to tell. So I interviewed him just for this talk today. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about Raymond Moody because he is the pioneer of the field. He coined the term near-death experience, and he's currently living in Alabama. He has a PhD in philosophy. He's a medical doctor, he used to practice in psychiatry. And he's also a world-renowned scholar, lecturer, and researcher. The first near-death experience that got him intrigued with this was one of Dr. George Ritchie. He was also a psychiatrist. They met at University of Virginia, and Dr. Ritchie was born and raised in Richmond. Dr. Ritchie wrote a couple of books, including Return from Tomorrow, which is an account of his experience, which I read or listened to most of. And this was an account when he passed in Texas. He was a young recruit for World War II. And he got very sick with pneumonia, and he died in his bunker. And he had an elaborate, incredible experience. And it had a profound effect on his life. And you'll find that that is a consistent theme with these experiences as well. So all of these things convince me of their reality without a doubt, because of the transformative effect they have on the folks that have them. There's another prominent near-death experiencer named Eben Alexander. He was a neurosurgeon who contracted meningitis and was in a deep coma for 7 days with his neocortex destroyed. I mean, he's a neurosurgeon, and here he is with his brain being destroyed by a bacterial infection, and then having this vivid experience that he says is more real than real, which is another consistency. And he came to Unity of Fairfax twice, and I went and saw him both times. He is the warmest, friendliest man. He just exudes that friendly, positive vibe. And I will say, if you watch him on YouTube or something, he appears very dry and academic. So don't hold that against him. He's a lovely guy. So, I'd say over time, I've listened to hundreds of these reports. I'm starting to get familiar with the names and faces of the people that are instrumental in the field. And there's really not enough time to go through everything I want to say, but I'll just go through some of the commonalities between near-death experiences. And this is kind of a representative experience. One is they don't always realize they've died right away. They still feel like themselves. They sometimes don't recognize their own body because we don't see ourselves in 3D. We always see ourselves in 2D, in photos and mirrors and such. If they do recognize themselves, they don't really care about their body. They kind of feel detached about it. And at some point, they become aware that they've left their body, typically by looking at it from above and observing the activity and often chaos around their body because they've just died. And, there's people trying to help, and there's emergency people, and there's, if they're in the hospital, there's all the revival attempts. And often as I said earlier, these reports are corroborated by the people who were present later on. Instantly, they feel free from all the negative human emotions. They feel a sense of unconditional love. They, and even not just unconditional, but incomprehensible. They say there are no words to describe it. They often see a light that gets so bright that they say they've never seen a light so brilliant, not the sun, not anything, but they say it doesn't hurt their eyes. They discover a new way of sensing where communication is telepathic, where they can see but not with their eyes and hear but not with their ears. They often even report 360-degree vision. What they think of is instantly shown to them. If they think of a person, they are instantly transported to that person. So the thought has an instant reaction. If they think a question while they're with that being, it's answered immediately. They all report no sense of time. They experience, well, that's the bright light again. They're greeted by their family members sometimes. When they see their family members who have passed, they always look young and beautiful at their prime, no matter what their condition was when they died. And sometimes they are greeted by a powerful entity, such as an angel or archangel, and even often, actually, it is a huge, powerful being that they identify as Jesus. The other classic thing we've all heard about, the life flashing before our eyes, like that's, we say that, all the time in common parlance. Well, that's real. They experience a panoramic life review from the moment of their birth that flashes, they say, very quickly. But what is different about this that I don't think is common knowledge is that they always experience the life review from the point of view of the people that they're interacting with. The thing that they're shown is how that person felt, not just shown, but they feel it. They feel that other person's feelings and experience it from that perspective. And they're often shown the downstream effects, whatever that, if that interaction was positive or negative. If it was positive, they'll be shown how that affected the rest of that person's day and the other people that they met, and on and on and on. Or negative, same thing. They are, even though they are shown the good, the bad, and the ugly, there is no judgment. This is one of the most prominent things to me because the Bible, we just get so hammered with the judgment and the fear. There was no judgment. Nobody has ever reported that this being that was with them exuded anything other than pure unconditional love. It's they who were judging themselves, gosh, wow, I'm sorry I did that. They felt remorse. So we judge ourselves. And even through the worst of what they had done, and some of them that I listened to was pretty bad, what they had done, they were held in overwhelming unconditional love. One of these guys was a sniper for the military. He had killed many people. He was taken straight to heaven, according to his story. He did not have a negative experience. Some people do have a negative experience. The skeptics say that they call it a dream. The people not only say that it's not dreamlike, they say it is more real than real. That statement is so consistent, and that's striking to me because that's not something normal that we would say. When we have a dream, we know it was a dream. When we hallucinate, if there's a hallucination, it feels like a hallucination, but they always say it was more real than real. So, all of these things are some of the commonalities. There's many more that I could talk about. The stories, like I said, are very different. They can be very elaborate. And then at some point, they're given a choice. Well, one of two things. They're either given a choice to come back or they told they must come back. And they never want to come back. I listened to a recent interview with Raymond Moody, who must have heard untold thousands of these stories by now. And he cannot remember one single person who told him that they wanted to come back. So that's another, really compelling detail. If they're told they have to come back, it's because they haven't fulfilled their mission. And I've given a talk here, Earth School. I do believe we're here to learn lessons, to accomplish something. And that is often what they say. You haven't completed what you came here to do. So they're sent back and they have no choice in the matter. If they are given a choice, then the person, oh, and I just want to say, I find it humorous sometimes because the people will argue with Jesus. They'll be like, but, and they protest, but that's always, the reply is always gentle. And they are sent back into their body. They find themselves waking up. The people that get a choice, if they're not sure what to do, they might be shown the effect of their death on their family members. And if they see that their parents or their children will not fare well, that they will suffer, they often come back because they don't want to see their family members, their loved ones suffer. And so obviously we don't get to talk to any of the ones that chose to stay, but the ones that came back, they also sometimes choose to come back because they understand that they haven't finished what they came here to do. And they come back to often really painful and damaged bodies. So they they are immediately regretful that they made that decision. And even angry, if they're resuscitated by a doctor, some of them wake up really angry that they have been brought back to life. So yeah, just fascinating stuff. A couple of them that I have read have come back to dead bodies, and I mean the sheet pulled up over their head on the stretcher waiting to go to the morgue. Dr. Ritchie reported that experience. And so did Danian Brinkley, who's the sniper that I talked about earlier. He also has some books. He died multiple times and had pretty amazing experiences each time. And then when they do come back, they're transformed. As I said, they sometimes change their profession. Dr. Eben Alexander, he stopped practicing medicine and he just tours the world talking to people about his experience. He wrote books and he has a meditation platform, and he's working to try to help people with this life. Some people become ministers afterwards. There was one story I listened to of a pest exterminator crawling into a guy's crawl space, and he bumped a live wire and it electrocuted him. And while he was dying from this electrocution, he encountered a being that he called God that spoke his name in a very powerful way. And the homeowner pulled him out. And in the interview, the homeowner said, a pest guy crawled into my crawl space and a preacher came out. He literally became a minister after that. Atheists meet Jesus. They go to heaven and they come back with their belief system completely rewired. So yeah, obviously this is one of the most powerful experiences that I think a person can possibly have. Now, I called it the religion of near-death experiences. Here are some of the verses in the Bible. There's just a few. I'm sure that there's more, and I'd be open to those that you guys know of that you think are consistent with near-death experiences. The first one is 1 Corinthians 13:12. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know even as I am known. To me, that speaks really powerfully of the experience people have on the other side, where they have instant access to whatever information they want. There is this, as I said, realer than real, perfect clarity. And they come face to face with Jesus or God or source. They have many different words for it, as we all do. Romans 8:28, and we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. So the near-death experiencers all know that we are here to learn how to love and to help uplift others, because their experience with us, other people's experience with us, is one of the most important factors. The effect that we have, we just don't understand the power that we have to affect other people's lives. I think I go through life, not really aware of, even small things, how they can affect other people. And one lady that I can recall said that she just gave a woman in a wheelchair a great big smile, and that was shown to her in part of her life review as having helped that lady in the wheelchair feel really seen and supported. And that all things really are working for our good. Another one is the golden rule. I mean, everybody knows about the golden rule, but how many people that we see practice it? If everybody practiced the golden rule, there would be none of this stuff going on. There would be no war. There would be no strife, because we would be treating other people the way that we want to be treated. And those near-death experiences really reflect that. I think I'll save the differences for another talk. Would that be all right? Okay, cool. Yeah, because I don't know. Am I out of time? Somebody time check me. No? Okay. All right, thank you. So here's the interview I did with my friend. His name is Patrick, and he gave me permission to say his name. So let's see if you can hear any of the commonalities that I've spoke of in his story. So he said that it was a hot as hell day on July 2016. He was supposed to go out and trim an elderly woman's hedge, which he described as really a monstrous hedge, really big, and he declined to do it. And instead, it was a good thing, because instead he had a heart attack. And he said he was in surgery, having a balloon and a stent inserted in his heart, but he flatlined. And he had a near-death experience where he found himself out of his body and surveying the scene below him. And his younger brother, Mark, had preceded him in death. And Mark, he described colorfully as having a Memphis accent, and he made every one-syllable word into a two-syllable word. So he saw his deceased younger brother next to him, and he said, and there were also two other entities, a green and blue-robed entity. And he said that Mark said to him in his Memphis accent, "Hyatt, you got two choices here. You can either stay or you can go." And it was telepathic. And Patrick he communicated to his brother, "I have more to do here, don't I?" And he said, "Yeah, you do." And he was sent back to his body. And he said that he felt a peace that surpassed anything he had ever experienced. I asked him if it changed his life, and if so, in what way. And he said, "My life priorities markedly changed. My appreciation, sense of gratitude is a daily thing. Waking up every morning, he feels a sense of gratitude, and he wants to spend the time he has with the people he cares about. And he's more accepting now of how people are." He said, "I'm working to become the best version of Patrick that I can." And he said, "It's how we have lived our lives that counts." He said that he had an instant sense of love when out of his body. He said, I felt a sense of light and lightness. I was also glowing, and Mark and the other two were glowing. He said, it's almost impossible to describe. And then I asked him if he told people right away. And he said only his girlfriend at the time. And that's also really common. People are afraid to tell their stories because they're worried about being judged as crazy. And I asked him, did it change your concept of death? And he said it did change his concept of death. And it brought me to the point where I have said to myself, whenever the time comes, I am grateful for all the time I've gotten. And I get a little choked up. And all the people in my life for the good lessons and the bad lessons. I'm grateful for the people I have loved and that have loved me. When the time comes, the answer will be yes, it's time to stay. So that was Patrick's story. Did you hear some of the commonalities? And let's just unmute. Let's just talk about this. Okay, so what you got? You have any thoughts, reactions?
Well, I mean, it's a topic that seems to be growing. I mean, dramatically. Not only have most of us heard, according to the raising of hands, about near-death experiences, but the interest. It's like a spiritual awakening of sorts. We're getting a glimpse of the other side, so to speak. We had one, my wife and I were talking to our physician, GP, and he told us about, I believe it was, I might get this wrong, but if that's the case, Jesse will be yelling at me from the kitchen. No, that's not right. But one of his fellow surgeons was talking about working on somebody who was blind from birth, and they had a simple procedure, which normally is, either working on the spleen or whatever, I forget what, and she flatlined. And they took quite a while to bring her back. And then when she came out of anesthesia, she told, the similar stories that she saw everything that was going on below her and the panicking going on in the room and the colors and everything. But she also came back blind. So she had sight, perfect sight, seeing colors and what everybody was doing and faces and so forth. And that's a tough one because you come back from that bliss and sight when she was, sightless, blind since birth. So that was, one story. And I'm sure a lot of you have other stories. So I'll share. So anybody raise your hand and tell us what you think.
Wow.
I might as well chip in here since I'm the oldest one in the room. And I remember Patty insisting that I go to the doctor. And I went to the doctor, and the doctor spent about 10 minutes feeling for my pulse. And he says, did you drive here? And I said, no, my wife brought me. He said, that's good, because I want you to go directly to the hospital. And when I got to the hospital, apparently, I don't know if I flatlined, but I had 14 people in the room, and apparently my pulse did stop, and thus the major response of everybody at Fairfax Hospital. And they said, well, the doctor, the surgeon will be here. And he came in and he said, let's do a new KG. And when we came out of the EKG evaluating, he says, well, you need a pacemaker, because my heart was so irregular. But everybody knows that I'm a Course in Miracles person, and the smile has a healing power that is unimaginable to most of us. And I used to be very prejudiced against Catholics because I thought they say their rituals and then they go back and do the same damn thing time and time again. And then, of course, I realized, me too. And I was a Baptist. So religion to me is a kind of a attempt to find an answer to questions that are fairly beyond our understanding. I went to see Wayne Dyer, and he talked about Anita Borgiani and her, I don't know how many growths she had in her body when she died, and her father appeared to her when she was dead. And those of you who've read her book, and Wayne Dyer made a major piece about that in that talk, and I bought the book, and in a month, they couldn't find a single tumor in her body. Apparently, her agreeable nature to come back and re-experience life was granted. But in the course, it says it's all in your mind. Your thinking is what makes these things come into your life and makes you feel they're believable. But after the years of reading the course that I've had, I think the major reason for us being here is clearly to learn to believe that we are perfect children of God, and that our purpose here is to learn to be loving. And you said that, and the other thing is fear is not a problem if we are true believers. We need fear nothing, not even death, because it's all an illusion. It's an imagination made into reality, as if we were a movie producer and we were trying to make a story real for us and for anyone we would share it with. And again, reinforce our desire to be loving. And I'll shut up.
No, thank you so much, Bob. I just wanted to say, like, one of the statements of, I believe that Course in Miracles is right, but one of the things that I always struggled with was the idea that this world is an illusion. Like, well, seems real, seems like a pretty persistent illusion with, dinosaur fossils and all that. But when looked at in the context of the near-death experiences and these people saying that that side is more real than real, and this side feels like the illusion, that it starts to make more sense. It's kind of like we see through a glass darkly. We can't experience what that reality really feels like. So this feels like the reality. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And
Melanie, I got a question, follow-up question. Your research, has it said anything about people who have had open heart surgery? That, many among them or some among them have had the near-death experience? Because the procedure itself is almost like shutting the heart down.
if I can remember, like, there is a case of Pam Reynolds. She's one of the most extraordinary ones. I haven't listened to her whole story, but she was there's a medical procedure where they have to basically kill you. They drain all your blood out of your body. You are medically dead, but they're while they do what they're doing. And I don't know the details, but if that's what you're asking, if the person is just kind of, she had a really vivid near-death experience, really worth looking into. Many of the people who have near-death experiences were cardiac patients who had heart attacks, like my friend Patrick.
Okay. Thanks.
Open hearts. I can't remember a specific open heart surgery one, but yeah.
Neil and I have both had the open chest experience. My heart was had two hoses replaced that were arteries and in the heart, and so when they ask you to blow into that breathalyzer after you've had your chest zip shut with stainless steel wire, it hurts like hell, and it's not pleasant. And if I had a near-death experience, it would be like you were describing that. They must have put me on a heart valve in the room and took my heart out of my chest, flipped it over, and replaced a couple of hoses to put it, like an automobile experience.
Yeah. So, Leon, and
I
then
have, oh, I wanted, I'm sorry, but your name, you mentioned, I forget the story, but I thought of a story, I probably have shared it with Melanie, which related to something you said. And that was when I lived in California, I went to listen to this woman. She had been in LA and got in a car wreck and broke her neck. And she was paralyzed from the neck down. Her parents had, since she had been a child, they had taught her meditation. And she laid in that hospital and just meditated and visualized herself healing, and she healed. The doctors said it was impossible. They couldn't explain it. She had one little limp, and she goes, I don't understand why I have this limp. It's probably to keep me humble. So that just really struck me, that somebody could have a broken neck. The doctors would say it's impossible. And with her mind, she healed herself, which kind of made me think there's more.
well, that's kind of the basis of Unity with Myrtle Fillmore. Remember the story of her healing? There's a lot of that we witness to.
Yeah, Joe Dispenza too. He was laid up that way, and he healed his back from a motorcycle accident.
He was riding a bicycle in a race, actually. He was
Oh, it was a race. Okay, I'm sorry. I knew he was on two wheels.
good story. He tells it in his first book, Evolve Your Brain. But yeah, Joe Dispenza is very much a, mind over matter. That's what he's all about. So yeah, we are more powerful than we think we are in every possible way.
And it's like life is more than we often think it is, in my thinking from these stories.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Well, thanks for sharing that, Marge. Leon, you had your hand up?
Yes, Melanie, I hesitate to bring this up because it doesn't fit into my worldview very well, but when I go down the rabbit hole and I'm looking at YouTube like 3 in the morning and doing something stupid, I notice that there's a small percentage of clickbait sites that are saying that a near-death experience is sometimes not that pleasant. That it's usually somebody banging the fundamentalist drum. That and they may be sincere. I don't know, but do you, in your research, have you run across a certain percentage of folks that do not have a good experience? And do you have any thoughts on that matter? I have a rationalization if it's true, but I'm not sure what I'm saying would be true either. So I'd like to hear some other viewpoints on it.
Sure, no problem. I absolutely have heard stories where the experience was not positive. And I actually, I'm really curious about them because I want to understand the big picture. I don't just want to hear about the happy, fluffy nice stories. I want to hear about the totality of the experience. So I do seek out those stories, and there's one from a guy named Harold Storm who had a very, very negative experience where he died in France. For God's sake, people, do not need to go to the hospital in France on a weekend. Okay, there were just no doctors around. I guess they were off for the weekend. But he was lying there in the hospital for days in horrible pain because there was a perforation in his abdomen, and he was basically digesting his own body from the inside out. And he was lying there in torment until he finally died with no medical care. And he was taken on a very hellish experience. And he was one of those who did not realize that he died right away and walked out into the hallway, and everything was very gray. So when they talk about the hellish experience, it's always dark or dim. I can kind of hear it coming, because the opposite is that, like, there's instantly this freedom, this love, the light gets bright. So you can kind of hear it coming. And he walked into a place where there was just, I won't go into the details, but he finds it hard to talk about. And then he was an atheist. He was a self-described very selfish, and he which seems to be one of the determining factors about what atheism is not. Some atheists go straight to heaven, but selfishness, self-absorbed people seem to have more of these experiences. That's just my observation. I haven't tried to, keep track or anything. And he tried to remember some of his childhood prayers. Now I lay me down to sleep. And he was just saying these fragmented prayers. And he said that he could see a white light in the distance, and as he kept trying, the things that were attacking him kept moving further away and getting angry. And the light got brighter and brighter. And Jesus swept him up into his arms and carried him out of there and gave him a tour of heaven. So that was he's one of those that was an atheist before and became a pastor after.
I've got a question about the light. If you could, I don't know how you'd
I-
answer this.
One more thing. I just want to say that, speaking of Bible verses, that corroborate these stories, ask and you will receive. That to me is like, if you pray, if you ask, that is the important thing, the action that we can take. You ask for help and you'll receive it. Thank you. Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, the thing that I've heard was more recently, it was a couple of months ago, where the commonality of near-death experiences is always, not always, but majority of the time, there is light, intense peace, no judgment, just bliss and so forth. And, the light at the end of the tunnel. You see people waving you on, come to the light, Well, I heard a slightly different take on that, is that not that you do an about face and go away from the light, because if you bring in some of the things that the Buddhists believe in as reincarnation, is that you will go to the light and be there and have a healing and be with family and then come into another lifetime here. I mean, that's what I've heard. And then the contrast to that is that if you ask to go back to source, to be with the creator or whatever, or just to go back where you're from, there's a different path that you don't necessarily go to the light. So have you heard any of those stories and have anything to share with what I just said?
Well, certainly. First of all, there's some people who are aware that they have a choice, that they can, speaking of hell, go either way. They can choose to be afraid and turn away from the Christ, or they can choose to go toward them. And they can, like you said, they can choose to go towards source. And, you brought up reincarnation. That's what you didn't say the word, but that is that's what people say. They get over there and they say, this is very familiar. I know I've been here before. I know I've died many times. And that is definitely one of the things that is not consistent with Christianity as it's practiced. I've heard, I don't know if any of you know about this, I've heard that reincarnation used to be in the Bible. Has anybody heard about this? Would you guys mind speaking about that? Leon and Frank both nodded your
Well,
head.
I do remember that there are certain passages in the Bible, none of which I can tell you off the top of my head. However, there is a story that is in the Bible where the disciples are asking Jesus, you know, about a person who's disabled. Is it something, you know, that they did in a past life, or is it something that their parents did? You know, trying for an explanation.
Hmm.
And I don't know, I can't point you to chapter and verse on that, but I think there are a few nods to it. Yeah.
Kind of allude to it. Interesting. Neil, were you going to say something?
No, I'm not sure that the Bible was actually, you know, the source. I think you could go back and it's you know, collection of other things that are way older, including Indian Vedas and stuff like that, which all included reincarnations. We don't know what was left out of, you know, all the Gnostic Gospels and all the other writings that were at that time, which the church actually went after those people and tried to destroy everything, you know, just like the Romans did for, you know, when they conquered something, they would wipe out everything and put their mark on everything. And so it's hard to say, but I think it goes back further. And I really do think that the missing years of Jesus, what was he probably spent it learning in Egypt, or, you know, the Egyptian schools, or even in the Hindu areas and the, you know, the Vedas and all that. So
Yeah,
because his teachings came out of was so far off from what they were teaching in Judea, and, you know, the Hebrews were teaching. He wasn't hanging around a bunch of uh, rabbis and Pharisees and all those guys. He wouldn't be spewing what he was spewing. I mean, that's my take on it.
I agree. Yeah, I mean, everything in the Bible came from something before it, right? The flood
Yeah.
story. Um,
The Ten Commandments came out 100 years before they went in the Bible. I read somewhere that blew me away because I thought that was just a Christian thing, but it was pre-Christian.
Yeah.
I just, this has been an incredible conversation, and you alluded to the fact that you might have enough, would like to expand on this in
Yeah.
another talk. What do you think?
You guys like that?
Oh, definitely. I mean, we could go on for a long time, and remember, we're still recording.
Okay.
So, if you want to close out this portion, unless somebody else has something to say, because in lieu of time and the amount of recording time we have, I'm limited to a degree. So what do you think, Melanie?
Let's close it out. We'll do part
Or
two.
Leon, one thing, go ahead.
Well, just one thing, and it circles back to the bad experience some folks have with near death and how I rationalize that. You know, sometimes what you need isn't what you want, and the intervention might be temporary and uncomfortable, and just about all of the near-death experiences have the same result, and that folks have changed their lives for the better, actually, more spiritually. So that's my take on it. So,
Absolutely. I just want to show you guys some of the books that I have here for your reference. I can also send this in an email to you, Neil, if you want to distribute it. This
Yeah.
7 Lessons from Heaven, Dr. Mary Neal. She had a really extraordinary near-death experience, and she has a TED Talk that I think is really powerful as well. And I put that resource at the end. This one is The Afterlife Experiments, Gary Schwartz. I haven't actually heard too much about him. I did listen to an interview from him, but I like the guys that are working to make this as objective as possible. You know, it's something that's really impossible to study directly because of the nature of it. But the other guy, and I just ordered his book, is Jeffrey Long. I really recommend Dr. Jeffrey Long. I think he's one of the most, you know, even keel voices for studying near-death experiences. He has a website where he has 5,000 reports from people. Some of them, like the totally blind woman that you described, Neil, totally blind people seeing and then coming back to report what they saw. That's pretty compelling. The first one, here's Life After Life. That's the very first book from 1975 that Raymond Moody wrote. And then he wrote a subsequent one called Coming Back. A psychiatrist explores past life journeys. The Place We Call Home, exploring the soul's journey, existence after death. And Proof of Heaven. This is Evan Alexander's book that his first book that he wrote. And I did get him to sign it when I saw him at Unity of Fairfax. And then finally, Reflections on Life After Life. So that's just a little selection of near-death experience.
You've obviously done a lot of research. Could you put the bibliography in an email to me?
Sorry again, say again.
Could you put those resources in a kind of a list, and I'll send that out with the recording?
Absolutely, no problem.
Okay, all right. Well, let me stop the recording, and then we'll do our closing statements. So hold on a minute here.